Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. We'll be joined shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Tonight, we kind of got a little bit of a nostalgic show going on. We are going to have a couple of old friends that are going to join us tonight, join the show, and we're just going to kind of talk in comparisons about the trucking industry, the new versus the old. What if things are still the same? What things have changed? We want to have a kind of a fireside chat this evening, nothing too serious. And we always welcome your input and your collaboration with our show. So if you want to jump into that chat feature, if you jump into the chat, we'll see it and we'll try to make sure that we um, evolve you guys into the conversation and get you involved into the show. But with that being said, without any much further ado, I'm going to bring on my co-host so we can begin to introduce our guest for the evening. So good evening, Chuck. How are you?
I'm really excited, Rico. I've wanted to do a show like this for a long time, and last week, being my 49th anniversary of buying my first truck, I just thought we got to do something for this, just an old time show, just to bring on a couple of people that have been at it as long or almost as long as me. Probably have a lot more miles under their belts than I'll ever have, but I just want to compare notes and talk about yesteryear. We hear a lot of things about the good old days, and some of them were, some of those days were phenomenal, but some of them weren't. Okay, so it's not all, it wasn't all wine and roses, believe me. And we're going to talk about that tonight: the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
with no further ado, I'd like to, if I can, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Mike Paolozzi. He's known on Instagram as Old Time Trucking, and we're also blessed to have Mike Gaffin. So we've got two Mikes. Mike Gaffin is the Boston trucker. There he is with his hat on. Shell Rotella famous guy.
Great one. I'll represent the ugly part of trucking. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time out to come and join us. We really appreciate it. I think we're waiting on Mike Piazza to jump back on. He had a little bit of a technical issue, so we're going to see if he gets that worked out, and we'll get him up and on board as soon as we see him pop in. But trucking, old school, new school, what things have changed and what things have remained the same? I don't know. I've been in the game for about a little over 20 years now, and I've definitely seen a lot of changes. But I remember the nostalgic when I was a little boy. I just used to love seeing those old cowboys going down the road. And here in America, I don't know if y'all had it up there in Canada, Chuck, but the my affinity, I guess, started from the old TV show from back in the day of BJ and the Bear. As a little boy, we seen that, and then that got compounded when Burt Reynolds did Smokey and the Bandit. So it just really took off from there as far as my love for trucking and everything from that standpoint. I don't know the things that I will say that the trucks have definitely, the technology that they have put into the trucks have definitely come a long way. You don't have the old hard spring ride trailers and trucks and everything else and things. Sometimes some of these trucks ride better than some of the newer Cadillacs on the road.
You're right. Well, the comfort level of trucks today. I remember my first truck didn't even have an air ride seat. And and it had back braking suspension. It had like camelback suspension. And if you had a light load or bobtailing, my God, man, it was horrible. Especially if the road was made in sections. It felt like your stomach was wrapped around your rib cage. It was the most painful thing I've ever had in my life, was having, especially if it was a light load. And on
Right.
some of those roads, it was horrible. They don't even make trucks like that anymore.
No,
Nobody would drive
no.
them.
I mean, isn't it funny though that they've become nostalgic now? Everybody wants to get in one because they never drove one before.
That's it. You know what? That's exactly what it is. They never drove one. I was over at this private truck show. Mike, the other Mike from old school, I'm sure he knows of it. This father and sons have 265 old trucks inside about 12 buildings on one property, and they've got another couple properties. And there was about, I don't know, 50 guys there, and some of the young guys were drooling at the look of those cab overs.
Yeah.
And I said to some of them, I said, guys, you know what? They're really they're great, and you got great visibility, but they aren't all they're cracked up to be, and that's why we went into conventionals.
Yeah.
And one kid said they were looking at an old GM Astro or Chev Titan, but the same truck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember this one kid. It was just last week. He goes, "Oh my God!" He got in it, and he said, "This is incredible. I can't believe the visibility." And I said, "Well, first of all, I want to sit right there. I want to show you something." And I stood right in front of it, and I said, I came back. I said, "You couldn't see me, could you?" I said, "That's so much for your visibility." I said, "Do you have any idea what that truck was like to drive on a hot summer?" You're sitting on top of the engine, and you've got a greenhouse basically at your eyes, and you had to have good sunglasses. And of course, the air conditioners back in those days, they weren't great, so they would blow all the time. And you're sitting on the motor. No, they weren't. There was a reason they stopped building them here.
I started out in cab overs. First 5 years, Cab International, Mac, Peterbilt. And all I want to do is get out of a cab over.
Everybody.
And now I look at them now and I go, "Oh, maybe I want to get one." But I know what it's like. Yeah, like you said, the roads are section. You get in the left lane, not because you want to hold up traffic, because that was the better lane. You could ride it a little bit. Comfort. You sit in a truck stop, you in your seat, or you're laying down and then trying to figure out how to get your pants back on.
Well, I remember, you know what? I remember the days of putting my pants on and off lying down.
Right. It took me a while to figure out it's easier if you put them on the floor and scooch and pull your butt up and almost sit up in the seat.
Yeah, that worked as well.
Yeah.
But it depended where you were.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
It didn't.
No curtains. It was that leather curtain that came across, and I had a cab over Mac. The curtains had magnets on the corners, which are beautiful. They would just magnet together and stay closed. That was kind of nice.
Now, what model Mac was that? That couldn't have been the F model. It must have been the cruise line.
That was an MH Ultraliner.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Those are nice trucks. They had air ride cabs. They were really nice. Yeah. I drove those coast to coast for a while.
Oh, there's the other Mike. Welcome back, buddy.
There I am. I have to get my wife to set it up for me.
Thank God for wives,
I did the same thing.
I don't know where I'd be without mine. Except tonight, I have to share this with you guys, and I always look at our audience as as friends. Tonight, I came in. I was working outside, and my wife said to me, "You better go upstairs and shave and clean up." And I said, "Why?" She said, I saw the video you did. You look homeless."
That's just part of the trucker experience.
That's right. So I did it all. I showered, shaved, and put on a clean shirt, and not even a t-shirt this time.
Wow. Thanks for dressing up.
Shirts 3 times. Mike Paolozzi of Ontario, thanks for joining us. You're with Thompson Terminals, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Right. Yes.
And what do you do there, just for our audience?
I'm a driver trainer, so I oversee all the hiring, the road testing. I do the orientation. Anytime trailers come in damaged, I will do the investigations on the damage, where it occurred, who the billing would go to. just kind of do the yard check every day. Right. And a lot of times in the afternoons, I'll just go out in the yard. I'll watch the drivers who's struggling doing pre-trips, post-trips, and just go over and just say to them like this, I'm not trying to show you up, but I just want everyone to get home safe at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm old school. So it's like you said before, if I see someone doing something wrong, I don't pull out a camera and video it. I get out of the truck or I get out of my car and I go over and talk to them and offer assistance.
Yep. That's it. You know what?
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely old school. We talking tonight old school. I don't want to say necessarily versus new school, but definitely old school. You had a lot more willingness of people willing to help, lend a hand to help kind of guide, show you the right way. Versus now, people are kind of standoffish towards one another. Don't really want to. Really assist too much, you drive your truck, I drive my truck type of attitude.
Yeah,
It was a lot less judging back then. Judging somebody because they couldn't drive. It was more wanting to teach somebody.
Yeah,
and walking away feeling like you taught them something. Yes. Well, backing in, it's like simple as backing into a park spot at a truck stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. People were, people were genuinely. Now I've got to ask everybody, now Rico, at the beginning you said you got hooked on trucks as a little guy watching TV, BJ and the Bear or something.
Right. BJ and the Bear.
And Mike Paolozzi, we're going to refer to you as Mike Oldtime, and
we're going to affectionately call them both. We're going to call Mike P and Mike G. We got two. Okay. We got two Mike P and Mike G.
You can just call me Little Mike or Teddy Ruxpin. That was my name from years
ago. It's call me Boston.
So how did you guys get into? Tell us both how you got into trucking.
Well, for me, it was my grandfather was a tanker driver for Texaco.
Right.
And when I was 7 years old, he came into the neighborhood one day with a truck and said, "Come on, I'm going to take you for a ride to one of his deliveries." And I got in the truck, and it was just like at the age of 7, I thought this is where it's going to be for me. And almost 40 years in trucking now, and 21 years of it was spent doing tanker work, dry bulk and liquid.
Wow, great! Wow, great history. And how about you?
Now that's definitely that's definitely got to be some difference there between how far has the technology come in the tanking industry from the old days to the new days. Has there been much change, or has because I know that surge is something else. I haven't driven many tankers. I've done a little bit, but it's definitely a different experience.
Well, with food grade liquid, there's no baffles. It's an open tanker. And when you shift those trucks, you have to shift with the slosh.
Right.
When the load hits the back wall, you shift while it's coming forward. And when it hits the front wall, you got to let off on the accelerator because it's going to hit the back wall again. And if you accelerate while the load's going backwards, you're going to see your drive shaft pass you down the highway. It's critical. No matter how good you shift or drive, you're changing your universal joints maybe once or twice a year.
Wow.
Just because of like when you stop the truck, that slosh is still going back and forth. So it puts a lot of wear and tear on the powertrain.
Okay, Mike, I got to ask you a question about pulling tanks without baffles. Is there any truth to it that if you get to a red light or a stop sign and you don't put your spike on, that the liquid will push you through the intersection?
I was never pushed through an intersection, and some of my heaviest loads were 95,000 pounds of liquid.
Whoa!
On a 5-axle.
Right.
And even if you hit the brakes hard, it wasn't going to push your truck. Unless if you were on snow and ice, it was definitely going to push your truck.
Right.
But you have to respect it, and you have to leave space, and you have to gear down as well, working the slosh to your favor. So when you know that light hasn't changed for a while, you got onto, okay, I got to start slowing down and start getting the slosh under control, because that light's going to change. And if it doesn't, well, I slowed down 15, 20 mile an hour, but I'll get it back soon enough.
Wow. It sounds hair raising. It really does.
It can be, because one time I was going through Rochester and I was going over one of those bridges where it's posted bridge freezes before road. And all of a sudden, all these cars started spinning out on the bridge.
Oh.
And rule number one, don't try to avoid an accident, especially with an open barrel tanker, because you hit those brakes, you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
And you just look straight and hope for the best. And I came off that bridge and not one vehicle hit me. But they were bouncing everywhere. And the hardest thing is not to hit the brakes.
Yeah. Of course. Wow. That's your instinct.
And I had one accident on the New York Thruway, just outside of Batavia. It was about 4 inches of snow on the road, and a vehicle passed me and then moved over in front of me, and I could see the ass end of this van start to wiggle back and forth. And I thought, don't try. And he tried to get it under control, and he went sideways and started hitting the barriers on each side. And I just had to pull up the seat and say, okay, I'm going to watch this happen. And I let it happen. I ended up hitting him in the back left corner and pushed him off into the woods. And when the trooper got there, the trooper asked the guy what happened. He said, well, the truck drove into the back of me. And the trooper asked me what happened. I said, well, he lost control in front of me. I got an open barrel tanker. It was either hit him or probably both of us are going to be dead. And I would have taken out a bridge at the same time. And the trooper said to the kid, he says, you're lucky you had an experienced trucker. Because this could have been a lot worse. And even though I rear-ended the van, there were no charges.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the trooper said I kept it in control. He said I did everything right. And he says in those kind of circumstances, he doesn't see that too often with truck drivers.
And I bet you the first thing he asked for was your logbook. Am I correct?
No, he never looked at it.
Really? Okay.
This guy was good. He knew the guy that was driving the van was about 21 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, and the secret I always learn in trucking, let the car driver talk first. Let them embellish the story. And then the cop's going to look at you and say, okay, what really happened? So,
yep.
So well, that's another thing. That's another thing. New versus old. Yeah. Now with the technology that most of us have, most trucks are equipped with dash cam, so you don't have to. You can just say, "Well, here's the video." You don't even have to too much say anything. You can just pull the video up from the incident, and that's your best defense if you if you have that running and recording properly.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right.
I know.
Why would you want to be on the road without one today?
The first big accident I ever had was on Route 33 coming in into Buffalo, and I had a Jeep come at me head on. I don't know why it was a Ford Ranger. Sorry, came at me head on, and the rule again: don't leave your lane to avoid an accident because you're at fault for anything that happens outside of that lane.
Yep.
And this guy, he ended up cutting it at the last second, almost went into the ditch, came back, and the hose tube on the driver's side caught his windshield post, and he went underneath the tanker. And my tanker went up in the air and landed. And by the time me and the driver in front of me got back there, we thought we saw a body hanging out of the windshield. It was the airbag. And we look in the pickup truck, and there's a girl sitting there like this, because the steering wheel's touching the ground, and there's a guy standing outside of the truck. And we thought, how the hell did you get there? He says, oh, I didn't have my seatbelt on, and the impact threw me out over the passenger seat. Whoa. So when the troopers got there, he told the trooper that I crossed the line and cut him off. And when the trooper said, let's go look at your truck, the trooper, he's just walking, and he fell face first onto the road. And he shines a flashlight back, and here's the guy's front rim impaled 4 feet over the yellow line on my side of the road. And at that point, he says, okay, if you were on his side of the road, how did his steer tire end up in the asphalt on this side? And I wanted to pry that out of the road and just hang it on my wall for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But with tanker, I've had 3 major accidents, 3 vehicles totaled, and nobody ever got hurt.
Wow.
And the whole thing always was keep it straight and don't panic. Don't swerve. Just keep it straight, keep it under control, let it happen. And like I say, 3 major accidents, nobody ever left in an ambulance.
Wow.
That's a good deal. That's
That
good.
really
That's very
is.
fortunate, because that's one of my biggest fears out here. Have been since the day I started driving was to be involved in a fatal accident. That's
Yes.
just, whether it be, of course, yourself. You don't want to unalive yourself, but you don't want to be responsible for unaliving anybody else either.
No,
right.
you know what? And it's, I got to tell you guys, I'm not a religious person, but I never got behind the wheel of a big truck or when I used to ride motorbikes, got on my motorbike without saying a little prayer first. You do need some help from the big guy upstairs. I don't care how good you are or anything. I don't want to get philosophical or religious here, but it's just a lot of it's luck. Boston Mike, how did you evolve? Tell us about how you
kind of the same way as Mike here. Dad was a trucker, 6 years old, started riding with Dad, and he was a Teamster in the beginning.
Right.
Old white 9000. I'd sit on a milk crate because there was no passenger seat. And we went trucking. And then deregulation happened in 1980. Dad started driving over the road. And I didn't know I was going to be a trucker till my first over-the-road trip with Dad when we got into Toledo at the T5 there, the old truck stop. I looked around and I just knew that was it. That was it for me. And then
how old were you?
At that point, I was 10.
Right.
And lucky enough to have Dad took pictures back in those days, which is really great to have pictures of me standing there at the TA at 10 years old with my cowboy hat on and my vest and my sneakers, like a real cowboy. And Dad became an owner-operator in 87 and retired in 09. I became a trucker legally. I was driving with Dad in my teenage years. Dad was sleeping. I'm driving across Montana in his Western. I'm 14, 15 years old. Just keep it straight. I'm going to go take a nap. And I started driving in 88. When I was 18, I got a local job for an over-the-road company. And 9 months in, a driver called in sick. You want to go to Indiana? And I was off to Indiana at 18 and a half. I had no gear, no shower bag, no pillow, but I was off to the races. And I ran the road from that point on for the next 20 years. And started out in cab overs, like we said, and internationals, and then big large car Peterbilts, and I was doing truck shows and running coast to coast. And then I gave up the road when my first son was born 16 years ago, and I've been local for the last 16 years, so I got like 36 years. So and now I haul dirt and heavy equipment. Like Mike said, we run 100,000 pounds all day long on 5 axles, and you just got to ride low and slow. You can't be in a hurry, and you got to time those lights and use those gears. And I don't get out in the left lane to pass unless I'm empty. I'm always in the state of the right, and just let things happen. Let by you and keep that big following. And I've had luckily knock on a good safe 3-4 million mile career so far. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, hats off to you.
3 or 4 million miles. You're not even that old. That's what's really incredible.
53. I know.
Yeah, usually I go to the NASDAQ conference. I won't be going this year because I've got a business thing. But normally I go down to Nashville, and they honor all these truck drivers that have 3, 4, 5 million miles, but they're all old people.
Yeah. As
a rule, these are guys some of them can barely walk up to the stage to go, but they're still trucking.
Yeah, that's how my dad was. Yeah. No, we did a lot of miles. My 20 years over the road was a lot of miles. A lot of illegal miles.
Yeah, I think a lot of
now, but a lot of creative writing back in the day.
Yes. I was just talking to my wife tonight about it, and I said, for me, it's just not fun to do anymore because you can't get away with anything. At one point, we did get away with stuff, but you just can't play that game anymore. You've got to be above board.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I go, why? Why did I run like that? What was the advantage? Did I get rich from doing that? No, you just did it because you did it, and that's was expected of you by a lot of people, a lot of companies, and sometimes you did it just for the glory of saying you did it, but it wasn't like
that's
there was
exactly why we did it. Let's be honest, we all did it for the number one, for the glory of, and we also did it to get the job done.
Yeah.
Intimidation.
It was a sense of pride to be there on time. Sorry, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. You're right, and I think if anything today, with some of the younger drivers, I don't think, and I'm not saying they should drive illegally. I am not saying that because they shouldn't, but I don't think people have that sense of pride in general of getting a job well done to the point where we did.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
I think that's one of the, when at the beginning, when we were all in the green room talking, and we're talking about old time culture and how you would never, in the old days, if we had cell phones that took video, we didn't have cell phones. We used to, if you're anywhere near as old as I am, you had a pocket full of dimes or a pocket full of quarters. That was your cell phone, and you look for a phone booth.
Yeah, right. What's a phone booth?
Exactly.
I saw a phone booth. I was doing a delivery a year ago, and this thing was old, beat up. The handpiece was gone, and I took that picture, and someday I'm going to post it as to what a lot of safety companies, a lot of safety offices look like in trucking. When you see how the companies are operated, you have to look and say that must be their safety office right there.
Right.
Because I know when I started driving truck, I got into it slowly in 1984. And back then, everybody was supportive. So if you made a mistake, there was somebody there to guide you.
Yeah.
And all the companies were run by truckers back then.
Yes.
They were retired truckers. And I know I worked for one company where I was sent to some place to pick up a press. It was a tilt and load service. And it was supposed to be a 4-ton press I was picking up. It ended up being a 16-ton press. And I called the company. I said, I can't do this on my own. And an hour and a half later, the owner of the company showed up in another truck with a forklift.
Hey.
And how often today are you going to see somebody who, like where I work at Thompson Terminals, Jim was a truck driver.
Yep.
And it's so rare to work for a company now where the upper management or the CEO was a truck driver at one time.
Yeah, it's true. There was at Trafex, before I left, there were 2 of us in the entire company. I was the CEO, and there was one of the dispatchers, and I still kept my my AZ or CDL, and he had let his go, but he had driven for Mel's Express years earlier up in Bradford hauling produce, and worked for Jimmy Hicks at Travelers. But I was the only one in the company that had a CDL because the young managers, and we started to, at one time we used to hire dispatchers that were ex-truck drivers. And we found that there were some problems there because sometimes they expected the drivers to drive the way they did, and some guys, and the problem is you get somebody that drove 40 years ago or 20 years ago. The guys today just don't have it, and you can't snap at them because they can't do it. They haven't built up that stamina. It takes some time.
Yeah, you
can't just trucking's funny. Everybody thinks you're just going to get in a truck and drive. It doesn't work that way. If you're not used to it, a 500-mile trip is bloody grueling.
Yeah.
If you're not used to it. And if you build up to it or you become used to it because, you start doing it, it's one thing. And that's one of the great things about having 21-year-olds. they've got a lot of stamina. The problem is they overplay it sometimes. And what we did find through the years was the 21-year-olds and up to, they weren't very experienced. They would push themselves. We all did. I bet you there's nobody on this call tonight that did not push themselves when they started driving.
Yeah, you gotta know when to say when. That's definitely the biggest thing. That's the biggest conundrum that I think a lot of people put themselves into. When you're tired, there's no replacement for sleep. And even if you can't do nothing but pull over and get a 30-minute power nap or whatever, that's better than continuing to drive on and you're swerving all the way down the road. That's that's an accident waiting to happen.
But you felt like you could take a 30-minute power nap back then and not think there were any consequences. Now you get these ELDs, and drivers are driving faster and unsafer and tired more now. I think
that's definitely one of the biggest conundrums that I think that we definitely put ourselves into when we're talking about old versus new. I really enjoyed. I liked having the old rules where you could stop the clock, where you could take a break and manage yourself versus now having the running clock, and the only way you can stop the clock is to have a split sleeper berth, and then you can only stop it if you're doing 7 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth. It's sometimes that puts us in a little bit of a quandary and a conundrum, and it's very difficult. But having and they say that they're supposed to be revisiting the rulemaking on that aspect of being able to stop the clock to allow a little bit more flexibility, and it definitely would help, because when you're running into areas, like I say, I'm down here in Atlanta, coming through Atlanta, if you're coming through here and you have the availability to stop the clock, sometimes it's better to take a break than to try to fight the 5 o'clock rush hour traffic.
In your city,
coming through 285. I mean, if you got the ability to wait 2 or 3 hours and wait till about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening and be able to slide on around and slide on through, it's a lot less stressful. It's a lot less, a lot better for you versus trying to fight and get in the middle of all of the the ruckus that can be Atlanta traffic, and that's just not Atlanta. I mean, you look at LA, you look at Houston, any major metropolitan area. If you look at the traffic during peak times, it used to be times where truckers could have at their discretion to be able to just pull over and take a nap and wait until everybody got to where they were going, and you could just slide right on through without a problem. And when they took that away from us, that definitely I think has attributed a good bit to some of us not being as safe as we probably possibly could be.
100%. You know what? It's just made things very dangerous, and it's not human. It really isn't. We need to rest when we need to rest. And
we need to be an adult. We're adults. We should be treated like. The problem is some people have pushed it, and some of us pushed it, but some people pushed it and ruined it for everybody else.
Yep, it did. Well, a lot of us, you know what? And there was that whole thing that came along with deregulation. It was the Wild West, guys. Let's face it. And a lot of people got hurt. But you know what? I don't know what the exact numbers are, but our crash rate is way up in the industry. Now, a lot of it has to do with really bad car drivers.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the automatic transmissions, where the trucks have their own mind, and you have inexperienced drivers thinking the truck should do one thing, but then the truck does something completely different. And in the old days, when we had our hand on the gear shift, we were in control of the truck. And now that they've taken the gear shift away, it's like breaking somebody's neck and expecting their body to react the way their brain wants it to.
Yep.
So you got two minds thinking completely different in traffic these days. And the drivers who haven't really faced like for us to say, okay, we can look down the road. We're proactive. We look 2 miles down the road to know when we're going to have to stop. Today, they're busy looking at their phones or playing with a laptop or something, and then they look up and traffic stopped. And they try to do one thing, the truck tries to do another. And the aspect of there's too much going on in a truck now with all the lights on the dash and the computer dashes and all that. There's too much going on in the truck where we just had a simple AM radio or an 8-track and gauges on the dash. There were no lights. And it was basic, it was simple, and we could focus on the road. The old days, you can't focus on the road as much now as you used to be able to.
No, there are a lot of distractions. Speaking of distractions, something that blew me away. My wife and I were on a tour last September in Italy. Now, in Europe, trucks are governed 90 kilometers an hour, if I'm not mistaken. And everybody drives a cab over, does 90 kilometers an hour. That's just, you don't see anything else but. The young drivers, and I would say the guys 35 and under, almost every single one of them was watching movies or something, videos while they were driving. Almost every one. The old guys weren't. But the young guys, it was scary.
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought, you know what? I don't know if I want to ever drive in Europe again. But there are a lot.
You see that a lot here too. I remember passing a guy going down the road the other night, and hell, I don't know. I don't even know how he was able to see out of it. He had about 2 or 3 screens or tablets lined up on his dash. Wow. And it looked like he had of course he had big old, we got the big GPS units now. He had the big GPS unit. Then he had looked like he had a movie or something going on over there on one of the and definitely, we definitely distracted driving is definitely a huge issue and a huge problem.
That's the thing that's got to be addressed. But it's funny. Some of this technology is pretty incredible when you think of a GPS system. How the hell did we get all over North America with maps? Do you remember that, gentlemen?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
The art of holding the map where you need it.
That's the other thing. New school versus old school. Most unfortunately. Most new people don't really even know how to use the map book. Don't know how to use the map. Don't know how to find the destination. If you didn't have a GPS, it definitely has handicapped a lot of people. But one thing that definitely comes in handy is being able to know, because what happens when we have those sun spurs or whatever, and the GPSs all go out. You got to be able to know how to get to where you got to go to. And do what you need to do, and knowing how to read a map book, knowing how to go, use the index in the back of the map to actually find out, and not only that, but understanding that all the information that was in the map book, from understanding what the taxes were for each state, understanding the weight, the axle weights, and so on and so forth. That all that information that was right there in the front of the Rand McNally map book came in super handy, and a lot of people, the newer people, I'm not sure if they even teaching that in trucking school anymore.
I doubt it. Did everybody I used to do this. Did you write down directions into a place and then save those directions?
Yeah, I still have my books. Yep.
Had it in my pocket. I would say, okay, I'm going to go this far. I'm going to stop, pull into the service plaza or the rest area. Look at it now. Like I say, we were proactive back in those days.
Right.
And then you would say, okay, I know when I get down there, I'm going to see a McDonald's on the corner. I know that's going to be my turn. And then get there, pull off to the side. Now let's look at the next stage of the trip that we have to do. How far we're going, what we're looking for. And again, communicating with other drivers too. We used to have CB radios.
Yep.
And there's a big difference right there. Now you call your dispatcher, say, okay, where am I supposed to go? They won't know where to go. But our dispatchers back in the day, they did those runs. They knew exactly where to go.
Or the drivers came back and they would say to the driver, tell me how to get there so I can tell the other guys. Or you would tell another guy in the yard, oh, if you're going there, if you're going to Mutual Biscuit in in New Rochelle, then as soon as you're over the Tappan Zee Bridge, you take the first exit and you go here and you turn left at the end of the street and it's right there. You can't miss it.
Yep.
You know? And somebody would tell you that, and you'd write it down, and then next time you had to go there, you'd look at it, and you'd use the opposite direction to get back on the road.
Yeah.
You know, it was different. Yeah. My daughter pointed something out one day. We were down in Dallas, and we had rented a car, and we were using Waze to get around, and she said, "Pap, what happened to your incredible sense of direction?" Because I was gifted with a great sense of direction. And when you're using a GPS all the time, it dummies you up.
Yep.
It really does. It's like,
handicaps.
If I was lifting weights and Rico was there pushing the weight, then I wouldn't get much of an exercise. It's the same thing with your brain. And it's funny when my wife and I were in Lisbon last spring, and we had dinner overlooking the city. And then the next day we were out walking, and I figured out how to get around because I had seen the city. Yeah. And so the university's there, the hospital is there. And when we're out walking, because their streets over there aren't like what we have in North America. They're all like, they go east, west, north, and south. Yeah. So, but I got to use my sense of direction and got us back to the hotel against all odds. Otherwise, we'd still be walking in Lisbon.
my kids are always fascinated that I always know which direction east, north, south, and west is. I always just know east is that way. How do you know that? I go, just know. You just know. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes, you know what? Because you always pay attention. Usually, I think it becomes you just kind of pay attention which way is north, which way is south, unless you're just continually using a GPS and not using your brain.
Yeah, well, in St. Catharines, Lake Ontario was always north.
Right.
Then when you start trucking on the other side of the lake, you have to realize now you're going away from the lake. So if you got to, I'm going to the lake, now I'm going south.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you look at the QEW, everyone, it's either Niagara bound or Toronto bound. There's no north, east, west, south. That highway runs around a lake.
That's right.
So you have to have a city direction for it. You can't have east or west like that with that kind of a highway. And there's a lot of highways in the U.S. that are like that.
Yeah. Well, all your beltways are like that throughout the whole U.S. They all go around.
Yeah.
Great.
I have to say that one thing I've always been impressed with is your interstate system. It's brilliant.
It is.
It's something that it's a marvel. It really is. And it's actually quite simple the way it's laid out.
Yep.
It's just there's too many people that don't know how to drive on those roads. But other than that, that's everywhere. We have bad drivers coast to coast in this entire continent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, having a license now is entitlement. You don't earn a license anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a right to have. And if you screw up, well, too bad. I get to keep doing it. And how many people now, they don't even drive, they get their insurance to get their plates, and then they cancel their insurance. And it's like, well, if something happens, I'll worry about it then.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine. I know people do that, but I can't imagine. Just like years ago, Mike, if you remember, guys used to take their sticker off their pickup truck and put it on their big truck.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
I do.
You can't get away with any of that stuff anymore. The shenanigans that used to go on with guys switching license plates and all sorts of stuff, it just doesn't happen. I don't think. I'm sure there's some people still doing it, but you can get caught so easily.
Well, with all the scanners they have now, they're going to know right away.
Yeah. And you know what? For the most part, I think back in the day, I think there was a lot more respect from law enforcement to truck drivers than there is today. Do you find that?
Definitely. I find like anytime I would go into a scale and get the inspection, or right at the border, get pulled in for inspection, after the paperwork, I was usually talking with the officer for another 45 minutes.
Yeah. It's funny, and I bet you were dressed properly.
Always wore a uniform.
Rico and I have talked about that. Not necessarily having to wear a uniform, but when when you're out there and you look like you are going to the beach, which never happened when I started. If you guys, either owner operators, either had a uniform or they at least wore clean clothes.
Yeah.
But I don't ever remember a guy wearing shorts and flip flops driving a truck.
Yeah.
You'd get shunned. And you see it all the time now. I started a big rip-roaring thing on Instagram for weeks. Some guys agreed with me, and some people were, no, the most important thing is to be comfortable. Well, you should be comfortable, but you should look professional.
Yeah, be comfortable while you drive, but when you get out of the truck, you're representing a company at that point. You got to be respectful.
Yeah.
You're representing yourself too.
And you should be.
Yeah, the cop or the scale tender, he
shouldn't be getting in bed comfortable.
Yeah, he's got 5 seconds to make it first. Your first impression, and what he's going to think of you, and whether you're getting a ticket or secondary inspection or whatever you're getting.
Yep. And I got pulled into the scales down Alberta, North Carolina. I was over on the drives. I had fueled up, filled my tanks, and I was 1,100 pounds over. And it was an open barrel tanker, so there's nothing I could do with the weights. Right. And I went over there and talked to the old boy there for a while, and we were talking about fishing and hunting in Ontario. And at the end, he says, "You know what? We got to settle up this ticket." He says, "It's $1 a pound. You're 1,100 over." But he says, "Damn, I've had a nice conversation with you, so I'm going to absorb the first 1,000 and just give you a ticket for $100."
Wow!
And it was just how you present yourself.
It's how you conduct yourself. Yep. Absolutely. And you don't jump out of the truck and just start yelling like an idiot, like they do.
No, that doesn't work. I've never done it, but I have seen the results of people that do that, and it's never works out in your favor.
No.
We had a guy who worked for us. I'll never forget a Polish fellow. He's a good driver, but he was hot-tempered, and he came in and he wouldn't let the guy go into his truck. Because he had, I guess this is before we went to ELDs, and he just got belligerent with the guy, and he ended up with a whole bunch of tickets. Whoa. And he came into the office, and he's madder than hell, and he's dressed like he's going to the beach. And my first thing to him was, "Joseph, were you wearing this at the, when you got pulled in at the Windsor scale?" "Yes, I always wear this." I go, "Joseph, you look like you're going to the beach. You were guilty right there without even opening your mouth.
Yeah.
And now you mouth off. I was so mad I lost it on him. Well, you know what? Now you've got $500 in tickets for nothing. I can't defend you for that. You're going to have to defend yourself for that because these are serious tickets."
Yeah.
And it wasn't wasn't just the tickets. It wasn't the money. It was the points. And the company now. That's the other thing. In the old days, we would lose points in a state, but if you weren't domiciled there and you didn't get caught again that year, you could get away with it.
Yeah.
Today, you can't get away with that stuff.
No, it's completely different now, but it's still all about respect, and that's the biggest loss we've seen in the industry is respect for authority and for each other.
Yeah, it's true. And and
for the equipment.
Yeah, it's self-respect as well.
Yeah.
I think that I've heard it before about personal brands. We all have a personal brand. Okay, would the founder of Coca-Cola do anything, or the guy that owns Warren Buffett? Well, he owns a large portion. Would he do anything to misrepresent Coca-Cola in a bad way, or to represent Coca-Cola? No way. Or to represent his company, Berkshire Hathaway? No way. And same with personal. That's so important. Keep your equipment clean. It looks good.
Yeah.
When you drive over that scale, that's something we were taught. Keep your stuff clean. Make sure if there's a lot of bugs, stop once in a while, clean off the bugs from the windshield.
You can tell a lot about a truck driver. I say it all the time about how dirty his mirrors are. If his mirrors are dirty and it rained yesterday and they're still dirty, that driver just doesn't have it. No. And his dashboard's full of garbage, I'm sure, and so on and so on. But I'll offer them. Go ahead.
I follow guys for that because I really believe that if somebody's got 3 inches or 4 inches of paper all over their dashboard, that tells me everything I don't want to know about them. Yeah. It's a real insight into how that person behaves. They're not professional. We had a guy work for us. His truck was deplorable, and I was on his case constantly. And then one day he drives into the yard, and I made him paint his truck, and it didn't look bad except it had like 6 inches of paper, and I was losing it. And I opened up his door to talk to him. And guys, I'm not exaggerating. He had 4 inches of sunflower seed shells on the floor where his pedals
worked with him.
I fired him on the spot, and he'd been there 10 years.
Wow.
Because, you know what? That's an accident waiting to happen somehow.
Yeah.
It's just we didn't need it.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the time, and we got a few guys that are on here, and whenever we have these kind of fireside chat discussion, the hour just blows right by us. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to give you gentlemen an opportunity to tell us to let everyone know if they got questions or if they want to follow you or anything like that. How they can follow you on your social media or anything like that. So I guess we'll start up in the top right corner with Mike G out of Boston up there.
Boston Mike.
Boston Mike, the floor is yours. You can tell everybody where they can find you or any closing remarks you'd like to leave us with.
All right, Boston Trucker on Instagram, the Boston on TikTok, the Boston Trucker on YouTube. I do videos, 2-3 videos a week on YouTube, just going through my day. I go to truck shows. I try to interview as many old timers as I can before they get out of the business, and the ones that have gotten out of the business. I preserve history on my YouTube channel, and I go around in when I have some free time. Local trucking companies, travel, Tella, sometimes the truck show, sponsor of mine, and Pilot Fly, any truck stops. The Boston Trucker on YouTube. Check me that subscribe button. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your passion to our industry. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, Mike P.
Okay, for me, it's trucking at old school. It's all about the old school values, and I'm very big in promoting women in trucking in the trades. I have a lot of regular people I can talk to all over the world, understand how they're establishing trucking, how the schools are working, and I kind of bring all that knowledge together when I sit at meetings and stuff like that. They say, well, how can we do this? But it's just, I think everybody just has to understand the respect aspect of trucking. And when we talked before about put your camera down and get yourself out of the truck and help each other out. You see someone struggling with a tarp, and that's what my page is all about. I keep my videos 30 seconds or less. I know the attention span of some people in the industry. And I know for myself, after 30 seconds of watching my own videos, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I think I said enough. So I keep my videos short. I do just a lot of advice posts and stuff about the old school values. And that's what the foundations of trucking were built on. And I would love to see those values come back.
That's wonderful. You know what? I really I appreciate the respect that you're trying to get and give and teach people, and it's so important. And if I can just add to what you're doing, if you do see something and you should happen to take a video of it, whether it's a bad crash or whatever, don't post it. We're trying to bring in the next generation into our industry. Let's work at trying to bring people in, not scare them away.
That's right.
Let's not show them the stupid stuff. we do have people out there doing stupid stuff. We always did. There's probably more trucks now, so there's more stupid people doing more stupid stuff, and we don't have the, in spite of everything, sometimes I don't think we have the barriers of entry that we used to, so we're letting people get behind the wheel that really don't have enough experience or training to do it properly. Let's teach them rather than make fun of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's not be our own worst enemies.
Yes,
and lift people up instead of putting them down.
Exactly. You know, it takes as much effort to lift somebody up as it does to hold them down. Let's lift them up. Let's give everybody the opportunity that people gave us when we were young and we got into this. And damn it, I got to ride on the shoulders of giants throughout my 49 years. And I try to do the same as to you gentlemen. And let's adopt that type of attitude of trying to make things forward.
Yeah, like, people can send me questions anytime. Like I say, it's Trucking at Old School. Send me a question in the messenger part of it. If you got a question about something or how you're not sure how things should be done, I will always take the time to help somebody. I don't care if they're young, old. I don't care where they're from. We're a worldwide community, and we got to work together and stick together.
100%. Guys, this has been just such a pleasure. I would like to do this again because this is what this show is all about. It's just spreading the word about it. It started out being all about different rates and lanes to travel, but the world has changed even in the 7 or 8 years since I've been on with Rico. The industry has changed, and now it's we do see that there's a shortfall in our industry with the culture in the industry, and everybody on this show is trying to improve things, and I want to thank everybody for it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and speak.
No, thank you. And if anybody needs me, just send me an email with your phone number. Best way to get hold of me is chucksnow280@outlook.com. And I'm on Instagram, Chuck Snow CEO. And with that, I'm going to let Rico back her in a hole for another week.
All right. I don't know what happened to my screen there for a second.
Well, I thought you were standing I thought you were doing some weird gymnastics or something. I know you got that whole fitness thing set up in your house, and I thought maybe you're starting to do a headstand or something. Maybe doing push-ups.
It turned me every which way I turn my monitor around here, but man, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely appreciate you guys for taking time out of your schedule to join us, whether you're watching us live or watching this later on. We definitely are appreciative of you doing so. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little bit of time to hang out with us, and we're always eternally grateful for you doing so. Please like, share, and subscribe. That helps us get into a broader algorithm, helps us get us into that the infamous YouTube algorithm. So if you would do us that favor, like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. And if you have any feedback for us, by all means, leave us a comment. Tell us, give us some homework assignments. If you would like for us to address some topics, some things that you would like for some research, so we can maybe be able to reach out to some contacts that we have in the industry, by all means, leave us some feedback on those things, and we'll do our best to try to bring on some experts to try to come in and talk about that at a little bit more in depth and a little bit more insight into that situation. So until the same time, same place next week, we want to thank everybody, thank our guests for taking the time out to join us, and we want to thank you guys, the listeners. Be safe out there, everybody. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip-flop.
See you later.
God bless, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.